Are you maximizing your fertility investment and the impact of your dry fertilizer? That's what we're talking about in this episode of Extreme Ag's Cutting the Curve.
Welcome to Extreme Ag's Cutting the Curve podcast, where we cut your learning curve with insights you can apply immediately to your farming operation. This episode is presented by Loveland Products. When it comes to crop inputs, you need products that are field proven to deliver both results and value. For more than 50 years, Loveland Products has been providing farmers with high-performance, value-driven product solutions designed to maximize productivity on every acre. Visit lovelandproducts.com to see how their innovative products can help you farm more profitably. And now, here's your host, Damian Mason.
Hey there, welcome to another fantastic episode of Extreme Ag's Cutting the Curve. We got Chad Henderson coming to you live from his combine, and Steve Sexton, who is a Loveland Inc. employee and agronomist. He's been on before, and last time I talked to him, he was riding around a bus in South Dakota, and I was being beamed in to talk to a bunch of customers. Maximizing your dry fertilizer investment. Right before I hit record, Steve, I want to start with you, because Chad says this product that you're even talking about using is been around for a long time, but the problem we seek to solve is getting more bang for your fertilizer buck. And before we hit record, I said, in the old days, it was cheap. You compared it to atrazine. Take me down that comparison, because everybody's familiar with fertilizer. What they're probably not familiar with is how to maximize it by putting a treatment on it and getting more bang for your buck. But let's go down the road of the history here.
So Damian, I'm glad to be on with Chad too. You know, I'm a baby boomer, and we started fertilizing in this country post-World War II, probably in the early 60s. And when we put out, 100 pounds of urea or 100 pounds of triple super, saw some amazing yield results. Started out with atrazine, half a pound the acre. And as the old timers would say, that field's as clean as a houndstooth. Well, when the weeds started to become resistant to atrazine, what was our response? Was it trying to figure out why they were becoming resistant? No, we upped the rate.
Double the rate.
Yeah, double up and catch it.
Yeah.
So I know some people.
You know what's interesting is, by the way, that you don't have to be a baby boomer to know that. Chad's younger than you, and he knows that for years it was, well, if it's not working, put more on.
Exactly.
They don't call me send it for nothing.
Yeah. So Chad's all about sending it. So what you talked about there with the atrazine is, historically referenced, and the products like Lasso or Dual or whatever, we used to go out there and just, open up the barrel and let her rip. Fertilizer historically has been pretty cheap. Companies that sell fertilizer like to sell it. They don't have huge margins on it. So the way they go about it is sell more fertilizer. And I got to tell you, I don't think that a lot of farm guys that I know treat their fertilizer. So are we wasting fertilizer money? I want to go with Chad first. Are we wasting fertilizer money by not treating it?
I would say there's always availability. And, the world we live in now, when we talk about efficiency and sustainable and, words we're supposed to use now, and things as a farmer, we look at, we like, well, we're trying to do better. And, like Steve said, potash has been around since the 50s, I guess it was, but nobody thinks about, and I've done it. I've done it when I started, I put out, a lot of potash trying to build soils, and they would say, oh, we got it in the bank, if you will. But if it's not available, it don't matter how much you got in the bank. You got a big bank over here, but if you can't ever draw out of it, it don't really matter how much is in the bank. And when we start looking at this product, it's Titan XC, and when we start looking into it, we're making availability, and this is a low cost and low amount. The first thing comes to my mind is a per ton, and I'm not about anything like a pint per ton. Like if a pint's good, let's put a gallon on. But that's not the way it works. It's about availability.
All right, so I think the challenge here is reducing dry fertilizer tonnage per bushel produced. And that's really where we're going to be challenged. And Steve, I want you to talk to this. We can't go out and fling atrazine around like we once did because of some regulatory environmental issues. I think we're going to get there on fertilizer. It's already happened in places like Temple up in Maryland because of the Chesapeake Bay, and it's happening in Ohio because of the phosphates that got into the Lake Erie and caused an algae bloom. I think that there's regulation coming. And this is probably a key to that, is figuring out how to reduce our dry fertilizer. Am I right? Or am I onto something or no?
No, Damon, you're spot on, because the phosphorus causes algal blooms, just like we have with the nitrates. And potash, people don't think about potash, but it can be leached out of the soil profile just like nitrates. If we don't have the CEC, which is your gas tank of your soil, your cation exchange capacity of your soil, and then they not only need to look at their CEC, we hope it's 9, 10 and above to hold more potash. But if your base saturation of potash is a half of 1 or to 1%, there's not many exchange sites that potash can hold on to. And so I see growers that want to just pour on the potash without regards to their soil's ability to hold it, Damien, and they're losing it. It's going to leach out. So it's very confusing.
So speaking of leaching out, when I was in Alabama this spring, Chad and I did a episode about cation exchange capacity. Is this issue with getting more bang for your fertilizer buck a bigger problem for him because of low CECs than it is for Kelly, who has good CECs?
Well, Chad manages his. He strip tills it. He puts it next to the seed, and he may even put out a side dress of potash. People most think, side dress, it's nitrogen, pertains nitrogen. Oh no. When you have single digit CECs or low base saturation of potassium, then you have to put out potassium 2 to 3 times. You have to manage it like you do nitrogen if you're going to get efficient use of it.
Okay, Chad, you've used a fertilizer treatment that comes from their company, Titan XC by Loveland. You said before we record, this is not even a new technology. You've been using this for a while. Why are we talking about it now?
Last year we done a trial on it. They said, we was searching for things to make dry fertilizer more available. We're strip tilling, and what can I do to make it more available and then cut back more fertilizer? Am I advocating right now, we got to cut back, let's don't put out no fertilizer? No, I'm not. I feel like we should use our soil test recommendations and plant uptake recommendations, and I think we stay on track with that to build the crops that we need to build and to build the soils and everything, to keep everything on target. But the answer is not either. It's not about going out here and just putting a lot of dry fertilizer out. So this product, runs at a pint per ton, and it just makes things more available. We started out, we was at around 200, 225 pound acre with a strip till rig. Now we're down to 150. I see me running some at 75 or 100 next year with this product. The last couple of years, we've shown great results because we're stripping these fields, and we're stripping like 24 rows with it, 24 rows without it, 24 rows with it. And we're doing this on mass acres. This is not a trial that's 1 or 2 acre deal. We're stripping 100, 200 acre fields like this. And this is the second year row we've seen positive results from this. I'm gonna be like Steve, I'm gonna quit trialing this stuff because you costing me money by trialing it,
Yeah, so you kind of started going down the road. I was gonna say, is it that you're using the same amount of dry fertilizer and getting way more yield, or are you getting the same yield with less fertilizer, or is it even the best of all worlds, less fertilizer and more yields?
Both. You're exactly right, Damien. Both. Like, we know that we can use the same amount of fertilizer and get the yield, back by using this product. I'm doing that. And, if they want me to trial that way, me and Steve will start saying, well, all right, how far down can we go? How far can we go? And I'm sure they've done this. Like I said, this is a 10, 15-year-old, 10 or 12-year-old product. Like, they know it, the ins and outs of it all the way around. But, yes, I think I'll be down another 30 or 40 pounds of fertilizer with this product applied with it,
Okay, so going back to Steve then, the historical, I think we're still there. I think we're still over fertilizing. Kelly Garrett said in one of our recordings a year or two ago, when dry fertilizer prices spiked, absolute huge run up, and I don't buy fertilizer every day the way, Chad does, but I know there was this huge spike in fertilizer prices. And Kelly said, unfortunately, it took the economics of prices of fertilizer to make us realize we weren't being economical to begin with. We were overusing the stuff because it was fairly affordable. Are we still overusing it?
Yes. Damien, think how many growers are still in their fertilizer budget. They're budgeting 1 pound or 1 unit of nitrogen for 1 bushel of corn. I don't know where Chad is, but I'll bet you Chad's somewhere at 0.6 to 0.7 units of N per bushel of corn. There's some growers still at 1.2. Well, let's take that to phosphorus and potassium.
Yeah.
How many are over applying that, and they're not using it efficiently?
Yeah, by the way, from a money standpoint, Chad, how much are we talking about? You know, like if you're at 0.6 or 0.7 pounds of N, for instance, for a bushel of corn versus 1.2, that's half. That's cutting your nitrogen by half. But you're probably not quite there, are you?
Yeah, I mean, we are on our dryland acres. We average in there around, on a good year. Like you come in there last year and I cut 60 bushel corn. Oh, no, I'm not half. I'm at 1.2, but that's a drought. This year where we're cutting a lot of corn, a lot of averages in the field are coming out from that 190 range, that 215 range. We're somewhere right now around 170 on that 200. So where does that put us at? Like 0.7, 0.75 this year?
Yeah.
But if you pull, like I pulled a couple NCGAs out of there, the same fertilizer, and pulled them out, that's something that's a standard, and we will be well over 200, in those areas on up in, mid 200s. So that gets it down there where it's really nice.
All right. So let's go back to then the P and the K, the product that you used that Chad's been around for a while, and he says is beyond being a trial. Like you can go out there and do a massive field, 100 and some acre field, do a 24 rows with it, 24 rows without it. It doesn't do anything for the nitrogen. It's for the P and the K, right?
Correct. You know what, Damien?
Correct.
Titan has been put on over 75 million acres. So people listen to this podcast thinking, okay, here they are flogging another product. Well, people aren't going to be guinea pigs because people like Chad have trialed it on their farm.
Yeah.
Growers are in the Bible, they talk about doubting Thomas, and he was a twin. Well, who was a twin? Everybody in agriculture, we're all doubters. We're all skeptics. And guys like Chad put it through the paces. The very first trial we did, Damien, was in 2008. Fertilizer prices were higher than they were 2 years ago. And the grower said he had 150 pounds of P and 150 pounds of K. He said, you're welcome to put it out, but I'm not paying for it. So instead, we cut out 3 pounds of P and 3 pounds of K. So he had an 80-80, actual 80 P, 80 K, and the 77-77 with Titan made him 17 and a half more bushel. So he cut out a little bit of P and K that would have been tied up or lost anyway, and got 17 more bushel of corn. And that's what it's all about, is efficiency and making our growers more money.
All right. So the point is, Chad, why are you?
That's where we landed, Damien.
Yeah, I want to hear your results.
That's where we've landed at. That's exactly where we've landed. We started out, and the first year, I just applied it and put it on there with it. And with a strip till, the way the pints and the tonnage work, this deal is a $4.05 an acre. And I was like, well, I'll just cut back like 8 pounds or whatever it is, for $4. I don't really know the math on exactly what $4 an acre would be. But we cut back a little pounds. Well, this year I'm like, heck, I'm not going to cut back. I'm going to cut back more than that. So where we was running somewhere around that 200-pound range, like I said earlier, we was down to 150. Okay, we cut back 50 pounds of fertilizer. We picked up 12 bushel, and we was $4 inputs.
I want to go through this.
So there ain't much you
give me those economics again. You cut back by how much? You cut back by how much, and then what was the result?
We're down to 150 pounds on our dryland acre. We're at 150 pounds of fertility, and that's just P and K in the fall. And we're putting a pint of Titan on it, which is about $4 to $5 an acre, $4 to $5 an acre. And this year was the 12 bushel. Last year it averaged 17 bushel on our trial. This year we went across the whole farm with it, and we stripped. I mean, you got to say that we went across the whole deal, but all the other farms got it. We stripped one field. Like I seen the return last year. I said, I'm not just trialing this on a little bit. Like we stripped one field to verify it, but all the strip till acres I had it applied on the fertilizer.
Okay, so the results are there. The question that somebody might be asking is, how does this work? I don't know how to put a fertilizer treatment on fertilizer. I call the co-op and they come out and spread the stuff. How does it work?
Well,
it's a liquid form and
go ahead.
straight on.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Damien, in the soil, microbes they don't have mouth parts, and they have to break down the chemical compounds in the soil to access their food. So they secrete metabolites and enzymes, very powerful bioagents. That's what we capture to put in Titan. So Titan is actually got the metabolites on it, the phosphatase enzymes, because we're spreading phosphorus in a form plants don't use. We're putting it out in P2O5, and it has to get to PO4 before it binds with the hydrogen before the plants can use it. And that's what's in Titan to help convert it to P2O5 to PO4. And it works very quickly. Now, potassium, we're spreading the salt.
So you explain how it works in the soil. It basically it allows digestion of the fertilizer by the microbes in my soil.
Yeah, because we're slinging rocks, right? We're slinging salt crystals with potassium and rocks with MAP or DAP or MES or MES10 or MESZ. It doesn't matter. We're slinging rocks. So the nutrient in that rock has to be made available to the plant before the plant can use it.
Okay, then that's the chemical side of how it works in the soil. How's it work to use it, Chad? You don't go out there with a spray can and spray this on dry fertilizer. How does it practically happen?
Well, any of your fertilizer distributors, they have a spray set up there while it's going up the ramp, in the mixer, either in the mixer or they have a spray sitting there, and it's all, scaled and calibrated to where they just spray it onto the onto the fertilizer. As a liquid form. It's sprayed on the field, and it starts that breakdown because Steve's right. The problem is that's why people back in, we've always applied fall fertilizer. It's fall. It's giving it that breakdown for the spring. Some places you can only apply in the spring, but where we could years ago, you always applied the fertilizer P&K in the fall. Spread the fertilizer out there. Yeah.
So then that's the next question. Is there a danger of getting this fertilizer out there and getting it broken down? As Steve says, we're flinging rocks. If I do it in the fall and I don't really need that fertility until April or May, have I used it too soon?
It's so good it broke the rock down, and they just run right through the soil. No, that can.
Yeah,
no,
right.
Yeah,
now they're down the aquifer. No. So
there's
no danger. Even in your soils, you've got some sand, you got some stuff, Chad.
Yeah.
Is there a danger of using something like this and then getting your fertilizers all used up by May?
No, I haven't seen that at all. No, I haven't. And Steve's going to give you the exact details on exactly how it works. But you've got to remember, too, what we're doing. We're applying fertilizer. We're putting it in the soil, and we're putting it in a soil that's going into cool temperatures. So now, Steve, go ahead and explain the rest of that in a better way than my simple mind.
No, that's fine. So, Titan XC is a biochemical. It's a chemical. It's like BT, the BT protein for the corn. I call it BT for the fertilizer. And it takes a while, Damian, to convert that P2O5, MAP, DAP, or MESZ, or MES10, or MAP MSD, get it over to the PO4 form before it binds with the hydrogen. But it's there, and with the potash comes in two forms, either potassium chloride, which is a salt, or potassium oxide. And so what we need to do is break that salt crystal down. And potassium doesn't have to be converted. It's K plus in the soil or K plus in the plant, and it gets caught in the clay layers. But we've done leachate studies, Damian, and soil tests. And in fact, soil tests, if people are putting on removal rates, the soil levels of P and K come up where they use a Titan versus where they don't. Mm-hmm. Pretty interesting.
Yeah. So by the way, speaking of the soil, before we hit record, we talked about the salt content. Most people never thought about the fact that with the more fertilizer you fling out there, the more salt you're potentially having buildup. Does Chad have a salt buildup problem because of fertilizer? Is there a compelling reason to use fertilizer treatments based on just the salt? Chad?
Oh, so I've done a lot of trials. That's why it got me where I am. I was doing this stuff before Extreme Ag, and when we started, they're like, oh, we need to use him. Like, he's been trialing everything. And I've done what people talk about. Well, I've got some extra money this year. I'm going out there and build my fertilizer up. And, I've spread in excess of nutrients, in certain fields to do trial work. And I have yet to see it come around. Everybody's like, oh, in a couple of years, it's going to be really good. Well, that was about 7-8 years ago, and I still ain't found it. But what I have learned about is salt content. And when you learn about salt content of fertilizer, you start reading up on it and what salt content is and how much it can take around the seed and then out from the seed. Then you'll open your eyes to the kind of fertilizer you're using and what your rates are. And then trying to balance that salt content, which led us into the strip tilling. Because in that center, I'm not affecting that ground, and my biology can do as well as it can do for the ground that I have. Well, then I'm just only putting salt in an 8-inch band. So I feel like I'm trying to do the best I can for my soil, by letting my biology thrive in the middles,
So the salt issue, Steve, is it something we're going to be talking a lot more about 1 to 5 years from now? Because I don't ever remember the discussion happening 5 or 10 years ago. It's kind of, it's maybe extreme ag or guys like you have opened my eyes to it, but I think it's more of a new thing.
No, Damien, in fact, this is where our Aussie and Canadian brothers and sisters are way ahead of us, because like Chad, they banned all their dry fertilizer in furrow at planting. And they're very keen on what salt can do to kill germination, a seedling at germination. So they're limited by the amount of phosphorus that they can ban in whether it's cereal grains, whether it's canola, whether it's pulse crops like chickpeas. They're limited to 30 to 50 pounds a map for the salt. But yes, Damien, because we've been blessed here in North America, in the United States. Don't get me wrong, we got wonderful soils. We got a wonderful infrastructure that allows us to get a lot of acres planted quick, but we've always sort of gone, just sling it and let's go. Mm-hmm. Those days are over. We got to feed the plant as we go.
And also I want to brag on our farmers a little bit, Steve, on that matter. We get to go around in the last few years. I've got to talk to a lot of farmers, and got to learn from a lot of farmers. And I think we have a really great, generation or last couple of generations of the last generation and this generation has done a great job, I think, of farmers of being able to not overuse. And we're doing a better job of taking care of the soil. We're doing a better job of seeing these things that are coming down the pipeline from our other countries, our other fellow farmers that, have been restricted on stuff. And we're trying to get ahead of that stuff and understand where our forefathers, all they knew was to spread fertilizer. And now we know better. It's not that they were doing wrong then, they had no other technology. Right. But now when we do wrong now, we have other technology. We have products like y'all spent money and invested in for the farmers. And so if we're doing wrong now, it's shame on us.
Can we reduce even more? I mean, you're already seeing positive yield result with a reduction of dry fertilizer by putting a treatment on it that maximizes your fertilizer investment, which is what this whole episode's about. Are we as far as we can go? Or Chad, are you going to get to where you're like 5 years from now saying, I thought I cut back. Hell, I was still using 20% more than I needed. Do you think we're there yet?
Well, what we'll do is what we're going to do is we'll hone in instead of being a broad spectrum like I did this last year with 1,000 or 1,500 acres of strip till. We'll hone in on per farm basis, and then we'll go to per field basis. Then we're going to go to per acre basis. And we really start honing in on that every acre as it is, and like I said, hey, on this acre, I got to have more fertility. This ground is thinner. This ground is lower CCs. This ground don't have organic matter. I got to have some fertility, but this ground where it does, like Kelly was talking about, they have those things and the nutrient availability. So yes, I mean, the dry fertilizer is something that will be down to almost non-existence with products like this. But it's going to take, we're going to be, the American farmer will be on that per acre basis.
Yeah.
We
never used to build it. Well, like you guys are now doing, variable rate fertility. That wasn't something that was done commonly. Yeah. And some people still are not doing it. This seems like this helps the effectiveness of variable rate fertility.
That's correct.
There's no doubt, Damien, we've done work with Titan and the VRT, and they're taking units of P and K out because they're putting out in pretty high levels of that VRT, putting Titan in, and they're getting higher yield responses, but 10% less fertilizer, and that's not hurting their soil tests. And believe me, we base everything on soil tests, Damian. Like Chad just talked about, dialing it down to the acre. They're looking at what that soil can hold, what its performance history is, what the fertilizer history is, what the soil test says is in that bank. Because we've all heard this stuff, broad spectrum, from companies coming out and saying, hey, cut your NP and K 50%, use our magic juice. That doesn't work. That's not sound agronomy. We have to base it on soil testing.
Well, this is an interesting thing. Obviously, Chad's buddy Temple up in Maryland, they're the Syndit twins. They like to put more stuff out there. They never met a product. But on fertility, this is the one thing where they're absolutely cutting back. It's like, hey, we're not going to use more. We're going to use less, and we're still going to get a yield bang on this. Is environmental stuff going to come to Alabama? I think it might. Hell, he's only 5 miles from, the city. I think that Chad's going to end up having his hands tied also. Yeah.
Well, I feel like I will, but again, I want to be ahead of that. We want to educate people on that, because our deal around here next to the city, is a suburban mom, we want to make sure that we're doing a better job on our farms than they're doing in I don't want to slam the folks in the landscaping business, but I feel like I'm doing a better job on my farm than they doing on some of the yards that their kids play in.
Yeah, right.
But that's here nor there. But if we all do our part and do a good job, then we can keep this thing going. But you're 100% right. Do I think I'll ever quit using dry fertilizer? No, I won't. It's my job as a farmer and passing the land on to the next generation to get the land in better shape than what I got it in.
Yep.
So if that means some dry fertility, that's fine. If it's biologicals, that's fine. Whatever it takes to go down the right path.
Steve, when Chad says this is something that you've been using for several years, is there a next evolution of the product? Is there something that makes this even better? Is there like something where you can say, you know what, the next iteration will do this?
So, Damien, that's an excellent question. And I think Maud Hinchy and her team at Agrison Sciences is working on this. What we've identified in Titan, the active ingredient, is 500 different enzymes and metabolites. Now, we know the 2 phosphorus enzymes, and I'm going to sound really smart here, Damien, and I even stayed at a Holiday Inn last night. But
actually, what Chad and I are noticing, you've got 3 different diplomas on the wall back there behind you, so you got to be smart.
Those are my wife's. I ordered all mine through the mail in.
Yeah.
But phosphomonoesterase and phosphodiesterase, because Damien and Chad, where science is looking at today, they're not looking at the bugs. They're looking at what enzymes in the soil, like urease enzyme. That's the second most predominant enzyme. We know how that degrades our urea. But we also know phosphatase enzymes are important. Those are in Titan. But there's another one, Damien. This is really cool now. Soil health. Here's one to remember. Beta-glucosidase. Because our soil scientists at USDA and your Dr. Fred Belos and Dr. Andrew Markinot's at the universities, they're not looking at microbes. They're looking at what enzymes they're producing. And beta-glucosidase is the key indicator if you have a healthy soil or not. If you're high in beta-glucosidase, it's healthy. If it's not, you don't. And that's what we do. We bring it up.
Okay, so and this is the further, we're talking about a fertilizer treatment, and you just went down the road of the stuff that's in our soil, and that's going to be my last subject here for us. Does Chad have a realization right now that the utilization of too much fertilizer has harmed soil biology? Yeah, it's kept your NP and K up, because that's all we used to, we learned how to do soil testing, like you say. After World War II, we started getting a little better at this. But we'd only tested for, and now we test for some micros, but we don't have a soil test for biology. And it seems to me that you could almost make the case, just like overuse of atrazine. Chad, do you think too much dry fertilizer has harmed soil biology in the last 50 years?
You can't say that it's helped it, that's for sure. But, I don't know if I've harmed it with that, or if I've harmed it with the, I don't know if I've harmed it with that, or if I've harmed it with a disc, or I've harmed it with a subsoiler, or if I don't know how many times I've harmed it. And then too, you got to remember in the last 5 years, it's almost like the wild, wild west of me and you talked about it, of soil biology or biologicals. It's like everybody's got one.
Yeah.
And they're just now getting where everybody can develop and know that there's certain algorithms or certain things that they can, test them with and it be consistent. And so I mean, do I think I've harmed soil biology? Probably so. But we're looking to do a better job at it now.
Yeah. Well, no, it's not like you're accusing. I think we all have, like you talked about, a disc. We've done a lot of compaction. There's all those kind of things. So get me out of here, Steve Sexton. A product that's a fertilizer treatment, maximizes our fertilizer investment. You said that we're working on even improving this product. Is there anything the person would need to know if they say, you know what, I'm listening to Chad, I need to be putting fertilizer treatment on my fertilizer to maximize it? What do they need to know? What do I need to know? Because I've never done this before.
Well, they need to talk to their Nutrient Ag Solutions sales agronomist and ask them about Titan XC, because like Chad said, it goes on a pint per ton, and that's irregardless if you're putting out 50 pounds of fertilizer or 200. So talk to your Nutrient Ag Solutions rep, and they can help them get their fertilizer treated.
Yeah. Well, from the math standpoint, if I can reduce usage of something at $4, it don't take a whole heck of a lot of reduction to make up for $4.
No, sir. And pencils are going to get sharp, right? Commodity prices have come down, meaning the price for beans and corn and wheat, and growers are going to get a real sharp pencil, and rightfully so. We have plenty of data that shows just a few pounds of P and K, add the Titan, the growers doesn't cost grower anything, right, and they're going to get more yield.
So I would challenge anyone to look at what they think the availability of if the MP and K is, or the P and K. Let's look at the availability of P and K for the first year they spread it, right? And then look at what Titan costs. And if they want to, I would cut back. You could cut back twice the amount of fertilizer that Titan costs, and I promise you'll have an ROI.
Yeah.
Bring it. Call me if you don't. Like, put my number up there. Call me if you don't, because I haven't seen it fail. And when we look at, nobody wants to talk about the availability. And we're not going to get into that. Nobody wants to talk about the availability of how much potash is available the first year you spread it out.
Chad, the Aussies say that's a dog's breakfast. 20 to 60% available the first year, and less than 10% up to 30% of the phosphorus. That's a dog's breakfast on your ROI for your fertilizer dollar.
So say that again. So
that's exactly what I'm talking about.
So what did I do with my $4 investment? Steve, give me those numbers.
Oh, so your first year of efficiency, like Chad said on your applied P, is less than 8% up to 30%. So you have 70% to 90% being tied up. Potassium is 20 to 60% efficient, because potassium is dependent upon soil moisture.
Okay. So the point is, roughly most of the fertilizer is unavailable if you don't have a treatment on it.
Exactly.
There you go.
And some of the phosphorus ties up, Damian, and then we won't see it in our lifetimes.
Yeah, right. Until it Good.
And we get to talking about this with a lot of people, and they'll start hollering blasphemy.
Oh, right.
Well, yeah, because they like the idea. Grandpa went out and spread fertilizer, and it worked for him. And that phosphate that will never be available, it ends up in Lake Erie, and then it causes problems. So no, that's a real thing. All right, the product's Titan XC. If you want to learn more about it, it's Loveland Products, right?
Yes, sir.
There you go. Loveland Products, Nutrient. His name's Chad Henderson, coming to us from a combine in Alabama. And then Steve Sexton is an agronomist with Agrison, Loveland. Take your pick. Nutrient. Anyway, all of the above. My name is David Mason. Thanks for being here. Until next time, this is Extreme Ag's Cutting the Curve. Share this episode with somebody that you think could cut back on their fertilizer, maximize their investment and their impact. Because you know what? We have hundreds of videos just like this that will help you up your farming game. It's all free at extremeag.farm. Extremeag.farm. Hundreds of videos just like this with smart people like the guys I'm talking to. Thanks for being here, Steve and Chad.
Thank you, Damian.
That's a wrap for this episode of Extreme Ag's Cutting the Curve. But there is plenty more available by visiting extremeag.farm. For over 50 years, farmers have turned to the proven lineup of crop inputs offered by Loveland products. From seed treatments, plant nutrition, adjuvant, and crop protection products, Loveland has the complete lineup to keep your farming operation productive and, most importantly, profitable. Check out lovelandproducts.com to learn more.